Okay, so we're getting people. Kia, he is here, and Emily. How is it going? How is the first week of classes? How did it go? Emily is saying, okay, so Emily is doing like this, and he is doing so. Yeah, tough. Yeah.
It's hard to judge at this point.
Okay. Hard to judge. Yeah. Because it's online or because it's just first week? Like, is it very different from before? Do you find your experience very, very different?
Some of the classes are very different because professors have kind of taken the opportunity to be like, oh, we don't have to meet. That means I can like just assign you work through our class period.
Yeah.
And then some other professors are like the opposite, where it's a lot less work because they're just giving you like lectures and they're like, I don't know how much I need to assign you.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a good balance of that some professors just haven't found yet.
Yeah, I understand. So sometimes it's more and sometimes it's less.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to figure out for myself in terms of my teaching, well, the workload is very important. So if it gets, impossible, let me know. But hi Adam. I'm interested in to what extent you do or you do not appreciate the classes like that, like synchronous classes, rather than just kind of posting things online. So if anybody has any ideas, any suggestions at any point, because we are encouraged not to do that, because we're kind of thinking that the thought is that we're not necessarily going to not everyone will be able to join, but I'd like to know more. Okay. So we were talking as people joining, I was asking how last week went, like what's your overall kind of impression of what's going on? Hard, confusing, frustrating, easy, fine, same as last year, things like that.
I think it's a little confusing, but I'm starting to get the hang of it.
Yeah. That's kind of what I'm hoping for. I'm also teaching this big course, Visual Culture Today online, which is 120 people. And I'm doing the Zoom thing the same way twice a week. So yeah, it's interesting. All right. Okay. So there are 22 of us. Well, with me, I guess. And I don't see anybody waiting. So we're going to start. Well, hello. Good afternoon. Happy Wednesday. Second class of our avant-garde and modernism. So for today, there were a couple of things that I asked you to do. One of them was to read the article by Paul Wood and answer questions. So towards the end of the class, I'm going to set you in groups to talk about your answers by the kind of in groups based on what you answered, and then we'll get together to talk about that all together. I asked you to read Karl Marx's passage on bourgeoisie. I think we're going to start with that. And I also asked you to read Tim Bettenden, this little article on Eiffel Tower. And I'm going to start with kind of our discussion of bourgeoisie, then go to talk about Eiffel Tower, then Paul Wood's avant-garde modernism, talk a little bit about post-impressionism, and kind of figure out what we're doing next week. Okay? Questions before I start all that? Okay, great. So Karl Marx, bourgeoisie, kind of on bourgeoisie from his Communist Manifesto. What do you know? What do you remember? If you read, like what is the role of bourgeoisie, of being bourgeois, according to Karl Marx? Just unmute yourself and talk when you feel like you have something. Okay, Emily.
The way he describes it, he says that modern society has split itself into two sections, the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. It basically comes down to whether or not you are a member of the means of production, proletariat, or a controller of the means of production, therefore being bourgeois. And he basically states that every facet of society has reduced itself to either being bourgeois or proletariat, while previously our society was made up of a bunch of different systems, whether it be serfdom or a monarchy. Now everything has reduced itself to those two categorizations.
Okay, great. Okay, that's great. It's a wonderful start. So the society in 1840s, 1850s, when Marx writes, is essentially consists for Karl Marx of two basically opposing groups, proletariat and bourgeoisie. Right, so bourgeoisie is the moneyed class, and proletariat usually is the poor. Okay, anything to add to that? Why do you think it's important for Marx, and why do you think Marx takes such a polar view, either or? How does it help him, from what you know about Karl Marx? I'm sure you've come across his writing. So so why do you think it's so important for him to have that duality, binary? Yeah,
I think he polarizes them so much because a lot in the Communist Manifesto, he talks about exploitation of the proletariat. So by polarizing the two groups, he's able to get across his point that the bourgeoisie is taking advantage of the proletariat and using them to kind of work this system that Emily had mentioned.
Okay, so work the system. The bourgeoisie is take advantage of the proletariat. It's about class struggle, and it's perpetual. So it's very easy for him to categorize and create the two categories, to say that proletariat is the one that is taken advantage of, right? Okay, Great. So we're studying art. How does it help us? What about the idea of bourgeoisie that potentially helps us?
I think
Is there a way you can raise your hand in Zoom?
Yes, you
Like a
can.
button?
I think you can, but I don't know if I need to enable that option. Oh, no. I need to check that. I don't know unless someone knows. Allow participants to rename themselves. Look, around the waiting room page. No.
I think if you click on the chat button, there's like it pops up a bunch of icons, and one of them is raise your hand.
In the chat. Okay, chat.
I don't see anything in the chat.
No.
Yeah, like I just pressed the thing that said raise hand.
If you click participants, and that there's like, if you click participants, there's
yes,
okay.
I see that.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Okay, so Ronan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, I saw your hand. Oh, you were trying it. I see.
Yeah,
Steven.
I was just trying it out.
Okay, Steven.
Okay, I kind of, could you repeat the question again? Because I kind of lost my train of thought.
Yeah, makes
this whole
sense.
thing.
Why is it important for us to think about bourgeoisie when we're studying art?
Well, the bourgeoisie is like typically the upper class and the rich people, and they had a unique perspective on art, and they kind of could gatekeep art in a way. They could dictate what was and wasn't art.
Gatekeep. Okay, so these influential people, they decide what is art, what is not art. Potentially, they can also kind of set the rules. Absolutely, they are also patrons, right? So that is important. Okay, anything else? So when we talk about bourgeoisie, how does it change at all, if at all? Any historians among us? How does bourgeoisie change, the idea of bourgeois, who is bourgeois, how does it change from 19th century to 20th century? Emily?
Essentially, previously, like high-ranking artists, like members of the academy, were previously considered like bourgeois. Like you had to be of an upper class to receive a classical education. But as we move into like the more modern age, it's not seen like that. Like the proletariat kind of takes it back, and you don't have to have the classical education in order to create art that could be seen as like of artistic merit. And start seeing the idea of like the lower class artists come to prevalence.
Okay, that is very important. So so I'm going to elaborate a little bit of what Emily is saying. So essentially, the idea of the class is important for the artist and also for the patrons or for art historians. Okay, so with the artists, it's goes something like that. Very in the Middle Ages and Renaissance, artists are essentially craftspeople. They are considered to be the members of the guild. They are working class. They are not necessarily poor. Some of them are pretty well off, but they are definitely working class. As with Renaissance and Baroque, and then creation of the academies, artists rise in class. And academicians in the 19th century, they are quite well to do. And yes, definitely they could be considered members of the bourgeoisie. In the 20th century, and this is what we're kind of going to look at, there is a definitely democratization of the status of the artist and also of who the artist is. And there is more and more schools that are being created and art education that is being offered to basically anybody from any class. So so that way the status of the artist changes quite a bit, and we're going to talk about that. More importantly, however, the main reason I wanted you to read Karl Marx is to think about more the taste and the patrons who enjoys art, because artists are, when artists make something, they usually think about kind of how is it going to serve other people. So right there's this communication, a dialogue. So traditionally, of course, the patrons are the royalty, the aristocracy, and the religious institutions, the church in Europe. And that goes on up to about 18th century, or 18th century or so. In the 19th century, with this kind of with French Revolution and all the kind of the reformation of Europe, political turmoils in Europe, and the rise of the bourgeoisie, the Industrial Revolution is very important. There is more, as Stephen was saying, money class, the people who have money. They become very important patrons of the arts. They become people who pay artists, who buy artworks. They go to the salons, these annual exhibitions or biannual exhibitions. They go, they kind of, they are in the know. These are people who have who have some money, and it becomes really up to them to keep up artists, especially academic artists, because in the 19th century, and this is why Marx's entrance into that is important. Marx associates bourgeoisie with a very conservative type of people. They are considered to be kind of conservative. They aspire to be like the landed gentry, like aristocracy. So if they are aspiring to be like them, they are going to try to buy objects that are exactly like those, or if they cannot afford something that is an imitation of that. And that continues on up to 1880s, 1890s. By that time, the Industrial Revolution and kind of the process of kind of gaining the capital comes to a point where the bourgeoisie becomes really wealthy. There's enough of the bourgeoisie that have enough wealth and enough interest in art that they stop being kind of copycatters. They stop copying things. They decide that they would like to actually patronize art themselves, and they become interested in creating original works of art, consuming original works of art, asking architects to build houses for them that look nothing like any other building around, etc. So this comes from this higher middle class that is bourgeoisie. Now, the way Marx sets it up for us is that bourgeoisie is apolitical. They don't want they kind of gain money from the proletariat, but they don't want to develop, or they don't want, accept money, of course. They don't want to become open-minded, etc. He stereotypes bourgeoisie quite a bit. That slowly changes as everything else. And we will see that in the early 20th century, there are a lot of bourgeoisie, people of the middle classes, who are incredibly interested in democratizing art, opening it up, putting, collecting and showing it to other people, etc., etc. So, but having said that, that category of the bourgeoisie is still present at least up to World War II. And there is always that kind of dichotomy because bourgeois in this kind of modernism and avant-garde kind of world, bourgeois taste signifies taste that is backward, academic, unnecessary, not interested in social values. And most artists put together stuff like innovative works that kind of, they think, go against the grain with the bourgeoisie. So, as usual, I try to confuse you. So, there are two ways that we can look at the bourgeoisie: more stereotypical, based on Marxism, that prevails in the society up to World War II, where bourgeoisie is opposed to intellectual, usually left, politically left intellectual, right? Someone who is more liberal. Bourgeoisie is more conservative. This is one way. The other way, what really happens in society, in some of the wealthier bourgeoisie, become either patrons of the arts, or collectors of the arts, or both, and they actually help to advance the avant-garde. Any questions? Did that make sense? Okay, so this is why I started with bourgeoisie, because we're going to kind of go back and forth on that. And very often, if you look at the patron will be middle class. Okay, so far so good. Okay, so next thing I want to do is I want to look at kind of the epitome of modernism, that Eiffel Tower that was designed by Gustav Eiffel. I'm going to share a presentation with you. So we're just going to kind of go over the article and look at that and kind of think about Eiffel Tower as a symbol of modernism and why is it so, and how does it serve, again, how does that serve into, and how does it function as the embodiment of modernism into the 20th century. Okay. Nope, not the one, that one. Trying again. Nope. Yes. Okay, so going back to the beginning. All right, so the Exhibiting Modernity, World Exhibition of 1889, and the Eiffel Tower, the article by Tim Benton. So this is Paris, this is Eiffel Tower here, unsuccessfully closed by the text. 1889 is the year of the International World Fair. Now, anybody knows what world fairs were? Like, why are they important? How often did they happen? What happened there? What are they? What is a world fair?
Basically, they're like a giant exhibition to show off like new technology, new innovations, and basically for each country just kind of say, hey, I have this, I'm better than you, kind of thing.
Yeah, okay, great, yes. The first one happened in 1851 in London, pretty much coincides with Industrial Revolution. The showcase, the international showcase for every country, to kind of get together and show what we have industrially, culturally, artistically. So the most recent kind of iteration of that is the expo, which also doesn't happen nowadays. But essentially, it's an exhibition where each nationality showcases itself. So usually each pavilion would be built in a style of the country. The country kind of considers its own original style, and inside that there would be anything that would introduce the country. So trust me, that helped to create stereotypes like nothing else, first of all. But at the same time, it was one in the world where people didn't travel as much as we used to before COVID. That was one of the best ways to learn about other cultures as well. So international fairs happened every 4 years. France and England were especially competitive, although the fairs also traveled to the United States and to other countries in Europe as well. The preparation usually took about a year, just construction and preparation. The fair itself would take about 6 months. People would visit for about 6 to 8 months. Then it would close down and go somewhere else. So in 1889, we're looking at France wanting to really project the image of successful development and modernization similar to England and Germany. And they are trying to do that through creating of the exhibition. So in the exhibition, there were 2 steel constructions, as you probably read. Galerie des Machines by Ferdinand Duterre and Victor Contamine, and of course the Eiffel Tower. So I'm showing you here the gallery, the machine gallery, which was unfortunately destroyed. That didn't stay, and we can kind of figure out why. This is the inside, and the inside of the gallery itself. So this is essentially a big glass and steel pavilion, and the Eiffel Tower is also similar to that. So people really didn't know what to do with that in comparison to most of the buildings that were in Paris. The whole idea of the kind of the idea of the using of the glass and metal as new materials come from positivism, and this is Auguste Comte, who in the 19th century French philosopher, who developed the doctrine of positivism, not positivist, but positivism. I forgot an M, sorry about that. He wrote a course in positive philosophy. So essentially he's saying that scientific inquiry has to be supported by evidence that we can see and understand. So he's very much against the religion, against anything supernatural. And he says that everything that we create, everything that we believe in has to be supported by scientific inquiry and by actual proofs. So this is the first drawing of the Eiffel Tower by Maurice Colin, including the size comparison to other important monuments of the time, like Triumphal Arch, here, the Statue of Liberty here, the Notre Dame de Paris here, etc. in comparison to that. So anybody remembers what happens to this first when Maurice Colin is someone who works with Gustave Eiffel, but he's not kind of the main architect of the building. So anybody remembers what happens after that? Just unmute yourself. Emily.
Eiffel initially like dismisses the idea and says that it looks ridiculous and that no one would ever accept it. So he initially kind of throws it out. But that later changes.
Yeah, okay, exactly. Eiffel initially says he's not excited about that. It seems way too positivist, if you will, functional, not very interesting, but very soon he decides that he got more excited about that. And the reason he got more excited is because he saw potential of adding some more decorative elements to that. This is a caricature that kind of shows Eiffel comparing the Eiffel Tower to the pyramids and how great and big he is, and he was pretty much known for being like really self-assured and thinking that he's a big person. It becomes a commercial success, and it still is, of course. 2 million people paid to go up during the exhibition. So during the World Fair of 1889, the travel revenue was 6.5 million francs, and the cost of construction was 7.5. So it's almost covered it, and then the difference was made up pretty soon. So the question, of course, this is the first Otis lift. So Otis Elevator is the American company that was the pioneer of the elevator technology, and they are still, I think, considered to be like the standards in safety and technology. So they came in and designed the elevators. Okay, so what do you remember? What happened in terms of kind of people, artists, and everyone else kind of thinking about the Eiffel Tower? Like, what is it? What did they? What was the reaction? How did people react? If you just unmute yourself, because I cannot see your hand, whether or not, because I'm sharing the screen, so it's harder. I don't have enough space everywhere to see you raising your hands. Anyone knows? So Gauguin, for example, didn't like it at all. He thought he was very much, at first, and he accepted that. People thought of it as anti-aesthetic, lacking in aesthetic appeal, even though it included decorative elements. If you're a fan of French literature, Guy de Maupassant, the great French realist, who is known for creating novels that were considered almost pornographic at that time in France, said that the only place he really likes to be now that the Eiffel Tower is built while in Paris is at the restaurant of the Eiffel Tower, because that's where he cannot see it. He really disliked, he was not a fan. So Emile Zola was not hot on that either. So it shows you that, as anyone else, people have their taste, and progressive people are not necessarily progressive in everything. So these arches that were supposed to be purely decorative and were supposed to kind of help people to accept the tower, and also kind of help it to fit within the architecture of Paris, because Paris has a lot of kind of neoclassical buildings, that really did not help at the beginning. It still was considered and seen as a symbol of modernity. But guess who liked it? Oh, we think he liked it, but otherwise, why would he paint that? Georges Seurat, the Eiffel Tower from 1889. So what do you think about this? Just kind of like, do you like the painting? Yeah, okay. So he's portraying it kind of being built, and he's combining here the style, right? The innovative style, the pointillism, and the fact that it's a more kind of important element of modernity. But more interesting, perhaps, is the photographs of Henri Rivière. This is a photograph, the Eiffel Tower 5 men at work on part of the top floor at the front of the bell tower. So these are men working, and this is a photograph. And these were published everywhere. But then Henri Rivière goes and does this series of 36 views of the Eiffel Tower. And those are lithographs and woodcuts, and this is what it looks like. And I have a few, because there are 36 of these, and he does that in the same style, more or less, well, similar style, that Japanese woodblock artist Hokusai, and obviously the number 36 kind of suggests that this is and there is a connection, views of Mount Fuji. So this is the one, you've probably seen that millions of times. And this is Henri Rivière, this is the Eiffel Tower. So he's using that as a symbol of modernity when he portrays, see, this is the tower, and he concentrates here on gargoyles of Notre Dame. Oh, here it's snow in Paris, and this is the tower. And then there's also Delaunay. So before we go further, this is kind of becomes really interesting, because he looks at the life of Paris, and he really shows us that modernity that I think Paul Wood discussed in the article, the idea of modernism, and kind of shows us that this is a modern city. The tower is here, but at the same time, as Tim Benton proposes, Tim Benton says that in order to show and kind of inscribe Eiffel Tower into the visual representation, Rivière had to kind of mediate and take distance from that. He creates that through, it's not a photograph, and he puts it in the background. It's always in the background. It's not the main protagonist. It's not the main element of his painting.
Professor.
Yeah.
Did people also like relate to the modernity of the Eiffel Tower to like, I know this was in like the late 1880s. Did they relate it to like Haussmann's like reconstruction of Paris? Because like at that point, Paris had just like been completely rebuilt.
Yes, but I think they found Haussmann's reconstruction. Many of them found Haussmann's reconstruction a lot more palpable than Eiffel Tower. The Eiffel Tower was so different from anything else that people who were praising the reconstruction of Paris, or elements of the reconstruction of Paris, still really did not agree that Eiffel Tower was actually one of those buildings one of those towers that were saving. So there's kind of like there was a functionality to the rebuilding of Paris that Eiffel Tower did not have. And I think people really did not like that. Okay, so Robert Delaunay, Eiffel Tower, 1910, 1911. So he's, you have, the book made a mistake. I think the date is different there. The style, and we'll get there, is kind of like almost, it's cubism, but kind of almost, he's using that. but in essence, he's trying to definitely to portray the modernity of the tower, the perception of the space, which has nothing to do with how the tower actually is. I think I have, no, I don't have that. I have, like, there's a lot of space around the tower, the Eiffel Tower, which Delaunay completely ignores. So he really intensifies that experience of modernity by making it very, very almost claustrophobic for us. So why are we talking about that in so much detail? Because Eiffel Tower is incredibly influential on the 20th century architecture. It's essentially kind of that you know, it becomes the epitome of the architecture. One of the things that we need to remember, and this is very important, and you may want to remember that because it will come back, is that 19th century, in essence, never produced an original architectural style. Again, 19th century did not produce an original architectural style. As many styles, we study so many art historical styles: Impressionism, Post-Impressionism, Realism, all these innovations, amazing innovations. Architecturally, nothing, really. We have two major paradigms that continue on throughout the 19th century: Gothic or Neo-Gothic and Neoclassical. And there are a lot of variations, and there are wonderful buildings that were constructed in the 19th century in many different countries, but there is no real innovation in terms of the style. And by around 1870s, 1880s, critics like Charles Baudelaire, like critics that are very aware of modernity, they start kind of asking questions. How come we don't have it? How come we have everything? Sculpture is slowly changes, art changes, technology definitely changes, but architecture is not. How is that possible? So Eiffel Tower becomes that first kind of first phenomena that all of a sudden shows that this is possible. Now, for many people at the time, that does not look like something that is very promising, and people really don't like how it looks. But there is a whole other group, I should say, of people. So this is just an example, and this is from 1911. So this is the same year that Robert Delaunay did this. This is Walter Gropius, who later founded and organized Bauhaus, and Adolf Meyer, another modernist architect, who designed a shoe factory in 1911. And that shoe factory would probably not be possible without things like Eiffel Tower, because by this time, about 20 years later, only 20 years, we've got an entire building, functional, that is essentially glass and steel. And this is not the only one. And soon it also penetrates in residential houses and architecture. In between, there is Art Nouveau, about which we're going to talk next time. But the innovation starts, the architectural innovation starts with an Eiffel Tower. Questions, comments, ideas? Had anybody been to Paris through the Eiffel Tower? Natalie? Yeah, did you like it? Yeah.
It was okay. I mean, the view from the top was pretty cool, but I don't know. It was kind of overrated, frankly. And also, we didn't take the elevator. We walked for a lot of it. And I was not having it. It was like a really cold day, and it was really windy, and I was not having a good time. I was really jet lagged. I was just not happy.
Okay. Yeah. Anybody else? I think it's I'm like the opposite of Guy de Maupassant. I think I don't like being on the tower that much. I agree with Natalie. I mean, it's great to have it in as part of the view, and it's an incredible structure when you come to that. But I also I worked some of it because my son wanted to go up. He wanted to be like, you know, athletic, so that wasn't fun. And yeah, it is what it is, but it's really interesting. It's kind of almost you feel so small in comparison to this construction. That was a cool element. Okay, all right.
And I didn't get to go on it, but I did get to see it and I loved it. Also, it lights up at night, every night. And that's
Yes, yes. Yeah, lighting is amazing. Yeah. Okay, so I will stop sharing for a second, go back to you. All right, anything else? Any other questions, comments, ideas before we continue? All right, so got some, I think the larger, okay. I'm going to break you into groups right now and have you talk about your questions. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to kind of decide, exchange what you wrote and come up with the best possible response as a group. Type it and then email it to me as a group. Then we come back and you're going to kind of present what you emailed in like couple of minutes. So, and I will take those emails, combine them and post them so you have it as an overall kind of notes for when you prepare for the midterm and work on that article. Okay, so again, as a group, you're going to work on the kind of combine and make sure that your response is really great. Email it to me. We will get it together here and talk about your responses. Now, you need to give me a couple of minutes. I thought I prepared our breakout rooms, but I don't think it actually worked. So I'm going to do it manually. Create breakout rooms. I need to divide it by 6. Assign. Okay. Heather, Emily, Sarah, and Hannah. Okay. Brian. Okay, Camille. Is Cassandra here? I think she dropped the course. Okay. Ryan, Camille, Brooke, and Brooke. Okay. Here. Amir is not here. Is Amir here? No, that's what I thought. Daniel. Madison. Oh, she had to, oh yeah, right, she had to go. Okay, 4. Jessica. Ireland. Phoebe. And Stephen. Jessica. Emily. And Jasmine. And then, let's see, we have Adam, Azul, Brock, Sam, and Nato. Although I don't know why. Okay, so it should all, the rooms should be open, so you should be able to join. Natalie, do you want to join it? Does it show? Oh, okay, cool. All right, some people are back. Let me get others back as well. So how was it? Did you, I don't know which question you were answering, but I think number two. Oh, that's like different people come from different groups. Gotcha.
So we're starting with number 2, yeah?
No, we're gonna start with number 1. I just thought that the group that did number 2, all of you came back, but apparently not. My mistake. Oh, Ryan, I overheard that you are working with Cynthia this semester.
Yeah, I shot her an
Good
email
choice.
like towards the end of the summer, and she actually hooked me up, so it's pretty awesome. I'm excited.
Good. So you're gonna be a gallery sitter,
Yep,
or
and help out with social media too, hopefully.
oh yes. Okay,
Mhm.
we need that gallery needs social media or something to get us out there. So
Yeah, let's do it.
yes. Okay, great. That's good. Okay. All right, all of us are here. Great. So I have some images if we need them as we discuss. So for example, the Cézanne's one. So I'm going to bring it up. Wait, let's try. No, that's not what I want. If I learned anything during this whole online thing is that my laptop and I are not always friends. Occasionally we are, but not always. Oh, hey, there we go. Okay, so the first question was, what are the 2 characteristics of modernism? And I want you to talk about, use examples of Cézanne, this one, the grounds of the Chateau Noir. So that is Heather, Emily, Sarah, and Hannah. What did you think?
So
Emily.
we were asked to like define like modernism and avant-garde according to how Woods, like figure out how Woods quite defined it. And we basically said that it came down to a preoccupation with like formic elements like color, shape, those sort of things, and like an absence of political or societal influence in a work.
Okay.
And this work in particular was representative of like that definition of avant-garde and modernism, because it does show quite a preoccupation with formic elements like the color. objectively is wrong. It doesn't make sense, but you can still break it down and like understand that you're seeing like rocks, you're seeing trees, you understand that up is up, down is down, and so forth, but
Okay.
it breaks it down. And because it is a landscape, it's like you have no concept of the society it was made in. It's completely divorced from that.
Okay, great. So modernism is kind of divorced from society, divorced from social concerns, interested in formal innovation, and this is really a great example. Other members of the group, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, like in this like work with Cezanne, the focus is a landscape, but it's not the subject. It's how he builds that landscape, not like the subject itself. So it's just like how it's built with like form and color instead of like what you're actually looking at and observing.
Very
so
good. Yeah.
with the characteristics of modernism.
Yeah. Okay. So the what not the subject matter, not the content, but actually form and color. This is what's important. Yeah. Anything else? All right. That's great. Thank you. That was perfect. Going to next one. That was Ryan, Camille, and Brooke. I think you lost Cassandra. So what do we?
So our question was, compare between the two Madonna paintings. Do you agree with Paul Wood about the role of academic painting in the 19th century? So we sort of agreed with Paul Wood, but it was a little bit more nuanced. So looking at the two pictures, we realized the later one is very cut and dry. The halos are gilded, so it makes it very obvious that the figures are holy. Jesus is sitting there with his outstretched arms, welcoming you into his kingdom, whereas the other one, it's sort of understood because the religion is more central to the culture in the earlier one, in the Bellini image, whereas the Bouguereau, I don't know if I'm saying it correctly.
Bouguereau, yeah.
Yep. The culture is more secular, so I guess that's where the nuance of our argument came in, was that it's not really about the academic versus the avant-garde. It's more trying to relate the same sentimentality between the differences in cultures.
Okay, so not academic and sentimentality, but differences in cultures in terms of their kind of religious association or more secular society.
Yeah, and then connecting that
idea?
into the painting, yes.
Okay, great. Okay, that's wonderful. Anything else? Anything else to add to that? Camille, Brooke? No, so far so good. So anyone just kind of like, do you like Virgin and Child by Bouguereau? Do you respond to the image? What do you feel about the image? Anyone?
I think I like Virgin and Child more than I do Madonna and Child, just because it's more I don't know, it's more straightforward, and I think the piece altogether might be a little bit more like practiced. It looks like a higher level of painting. Like it just looks nicer. I think yeah. And I know Ryan, you said it's gilded, so like it draws your eye in and it just makes it look a lot nicer, I think.
Right. Okay. So it draws your eye in. It looks nicer because I think the representation is very crisp. It's also influenced by Byzantium, by that Byzantine representation. It is very, very naturalistic. It also is, the quality of paint is very different by the 19th century than it was in the late 15th. So it's fresco versus painting, etc. So yes, it is a lot more realistic, and I think in a way we respond to that. Okay. we could also go further, perhaps, like Paul Wood to an extent did, and talk about that as being, you know, kind of kitsch almost, something that doesn't push any art forward, kind of stagnates, etc., and kind of think about that and how it relates to modernism as well. All right, okay, so next one. What is the role of the academy in the 19th century? Use the example of the Going to School by Jules Bastien Lepage. And that was Kier, Amir, who is not here, Danielle, Madison, and Ronan. And I think Madison had to leave as well. What did you think?
So I took I don't know, I kind of defined the Academy's role in the 19th century. I think that my other group mates had a better understanding of the painting, but I'll just read what I had. The role of the Academy in the 19th century was to raise awareness and improve the social and professional standing of artists while providing teaching. Academies would seek out royal donors to fund such an establishment. And I don't know if anyone else wanted to continue on.
Okay. So that is the role of the Academy. Okay.
And then we sort of said in regards to this piece, the Going to School, that it kind of represented how some artists, they would take academic notions and traditions in the 19th century, and they would mix it with more newer and avant-garde techniques, as seen in the painting by the girl. The subject in the foreground is painted with more of a realistic and traditional academic finish, while the background is more of an impressionistic style. So you see kind of like the coming together of the more traditional academic notions and the more avant-garde, like newer like notions coming together.
Okay, absolutely, that's great. Yeah, so we have here basically the two, and Wood makes a really good point that avant-garde and academy are, yes, they are opposing, but at the same time they influence each other. And not every member of the academy, of course, is completely conservative and disinterested in innovation. And we know that artists in the 19th century and 20th century, they would have a completely kind of different bodies of work. So Manet, for example, you know, Edouard Manet, the great modernist, also had a very prosperous kind of line of still lifes, which were exhibited in the Academy, which sold really well, and he just kind of kept those two ideas. One is innovative, genius, really interesting modernism, and the other one is a little bit more kind of more conservative. Two of them very separate. Now, a lot of artists who were academicians, who were respected academicians, by the 1882, 1880s, started looking at Impressionism. Impressionism at that time stopped being avant-garde to that extent that it was in the 70s. It became more and more accepted. And this is one of the points that I kind of want you to remember, is that it's a cyclical kind of, that cyclical idea of academy or something more traditional accepting more avant-garde innovative ideas inside itself, absorbing. Okay, that was great. Now we are going to go to number 4, Jessica, Arlen, Phoebe, and Stephen. Why is it essential to study avant-garde? And that's from pages 7 to 11. Who wants to talk? Why do we need to study avant-garde? Okay.
I'll start it off. I said it's important to study avant-garde as a term because it's been used in many different ways over the course of history. changing from a military term and then growing into a way to describe art that is new and strange to critics at the time that it's created. And then also how everything that was once considered like new and revolutionary eventually will become more mainstream. So what defines avant-garde changes routinely.
Okay, so yeah, so that cyclical change, it changes routinely. Okay, anything else to add? Why does it important to study avant-garde for us for the late 19th century and 20th century art?
Because it art is often a reflection of culture and cultural movements, and therefore by studying the art of a period in the late 18th century, late 19th century, we can learn more about the people who lived in that time period.
Well, that's very true, Stephen. I wouldn't disagree with that, but that could be true for anything, including the avant-garde. The question is why is avant-garde become so important for us in the late 19th century and 20th century? Why is that? Why in particular avant-garde?
I'm guessing maybe because it was kind of like a stepping stone into modern art, or how kind of art kind of disembraced the status quo, and it branched off into its own separate things.
Okay, so branched out, did kind of just veered off, I guess. Okay, any other ideas?
Could it have been that because that time period was one of really rapid social change that would have also been reflected through the avant-garde art?
Yeah. Okay, Sam, thank you. That's was what I was kind of hoping for. At that point, the avant-garde art, that innovation coincides with the social changes in different European countries. And we're going to, when we see, say, France, but then England, World War II brings us to Germany. Sorry, World War I brings us to Germany. The revolution brings us to Russia, etc. So all these avant-garde and modernism become a really have a really interesting relationship at that time because of this social relationship. Now, one thing I want you to do for next time, in addition to everything else that I want you to create something like a Venn diagram, those two circles, and think about the relationship of modernism and avant-garde. And I want you to see if you can actually put those two circles in relationship to each other. And there's no right or wrong. We're just going to have that discussion next time. So be ready. Just kind of put two circles together for next time, and then I'll ask you to show it to me. Okay, so yeah, so why is it important to study avant-garde? Is because of avant-garde and social reality of the time kind of come together. And this is the particular time period where modernism, avant-garde, and social realities interact, and avant-garde really becomes what it is. It becomes really, that is the time when avant-garde becomes that social modernism. Okay, number 5, give all the definitions of modernism that you could find in the introduction.
So we looked at a handful of direct quotes, and we kind of followed the characteristics of modernism that we were talking about with the Cézanne example. So one was the preoccupation with form. After the text was talking about Monet's work, it says modernism is not the subjects he chose to paint, but the way he chose to paint them. Not the picture's subject matter, but its more formal properties. And then the second characteristic of modernism was stress on art's independence, or autonomy from other concerns of social life. So after they're talking about the plurality of modernism, it says the boundaries of modernism have not necessarily been conceived in exactly the same way by different individuals and institutions operating at the same time and place. So it really came back to making sure you're paying attention to the formal properties of art and understanding that there's different competing definitions going on at the same time.
Great. Okay. So competing definitions, preoccupation with the form, and arguably art for art's sake. What we the article talks about, right? That idea of art created for the sake of art rather than for any social reason whatsoever. These are the properties of modernism. Okay. Wonderful. Okay, that was really good. What are the two opposing ideas of avant-garde that were expressed by Henri de Saint-Simon and Théophile Gautier? Which one is more prevalent today? We've got Adam and Brooke and Azul and Sam. So.
Saint-Simon's argument, he's talking like sees art more as a tool, like a utilitarian, or I can't speak, but he sees it as that, and really it's for the people, for the public, and for the society as a whole. Like, he imagines that art should be something useful to promote certain social ideas or even educate those that that don't have the access to a proper education. Whereas on the other side, Gautier is, he's the one that goes along the lines of, art for art's sake. And really, his idea is that even if something is useless, like if a piece of art is useless, he thinks that it still has some beauty in it because the things that are perceived as useful are ugly because they have that association with humans' needs and versus what they want.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so Saint-Simon is essentially talks about art serving society. Gautier talks about art kind of serving beauty and being independent of society. So this art for art's sake. We take avant-garde nowadays to mean more what Saint-Simon had said than Gautier. Modernism very often, as we just said, associated with Gautier. Absolutely. That's great. Anybody wants to add something to that? No, so far so good. Okay, so last thing for today before we kind of talk about next week. This is the Fragonard, the Swing, and David, the Oath of Horatio, which I'm sure you've seen and I've seen. I don't know why I chose those two. I think it's like I'm a creature of habit here. This is, how does that actually illustrate for us the idea of the modernism and avant-garde?
I think these two pieces show how unique the concept of avant-garde is. Because like avant-garde, a major part of it is like, it's divorced from like politics and society, even as it's like advancing. Well, these two pieces, even when they were like right at the brink, like being brand new, these are of the style of the time. These two pieces are very much like, they cannot be divorced from the society they were in. Like,
okay, yeah, they very much embody the social message, especially Oath of Horatio. Not so much the Swing. The Swing is more about enjoyment, but it still talks about kind of social moral, social ideas of the time. So by 1789, Jacques-Louis David would be considered a lot more avant-garde than Fragonard, right? The Fragonard would be considered kind of the academy, if you will, like outdated style. It wasn't necessarily I'm kind of being just silly when I'm saying the academy. It wasn't. It was just an outdated style. So there's kind of this. We've got four different things going in this discussion. I think the academy and modernism. So academy and modernism are more or less, if not opposing, they are at least with like they are kind of counteract each other. Then we have kitsch and avant-garde. As those two, kitsch and avant-garde, then becomes the avant-garde is something that is done by and for people who understand, people who value art, and kitsch is something that is done for bourgeoisie, the masses, right? The people who don't necessarily have a lot of art education. Okay, and then we also have the duality of modernism and avant-garde, which we just discussed. So again, we have kind of this three pairs: academy and modernism, avant-garde and kitsch, and modernism and avant-garde, and they all have kind of relationship to each other. And we are at this point, we were like the article and our discussion is quite theoretical. We are going to kind of go back and settle into practice quite soon, but it's important to understand those terms, and I will bring them up and kind of demonstrate them for again and again. So to kind of to close and to finish all this, I want to go back, look at the modules, and talk about next week a little bit. Can you see Canvas? Yeah, okay. So we are right here, and right, this is us. So we are going to be right here next week. So this is the article that I'm asking you to read, Elizabeth Wilson, about flaneur. These are the questions. And similar to last time, I have names, so you are responsible for one question and you're going to work in groups again. This is just the same article done with text just for accessibility purposes. These are videos. So this is a video to kind of remind you about post-impressionism. If you haven't studied, it's 8 minutes. It's really easy watch. This is optional. The BBC one is also optional. If you're interested in Van Gogh and kind of why he cut his ear, watch it. If you don't, that's fine. This is just pure fun and hilarious. This is Gauguin for kids, very short. This is a 2-minute thing from Al Jazeera about Gauguin and colonialism. Please watch it. Really interesting, kind of different perspective. The optional is the movie, kind of the Voyage to Tahiti about Gauguin. I'm going to, so basically you have to watch those videos, but they are short. You have to read flaneur and answer one question. Again, there is no blog, no assignment for that. You bring it in, we talk about that. After we talk about that, I will start talking about Vienna secessionism and Art Nouveau. So we're going to move, and I'll introduce you a little bit to Klimt and Art Nouveau, and then the week after, where you're going to read the textbook. So next week, you still don't need the textbook. The week after you do, so just kind of keep that in mind. Any questions? All right. Okay. So there's also the sign kind of individual check-in schedule. So some of you wrote, penciled yourself in here. I'm meeting. I believe I'm meeting Heather right now. Other than that, I will say goodbye, and I will see you next week. Thank you.
Goodbye, Professor.
Goodbye. Bye.
Good day.
Professor, I'm meeting after Heather, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, great.
you.
You're done then with work. Okay. Wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Hold on 1 second. I want to stop the